Well, welcome to this video tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. Of course, today we're taking a look at this Avengers text effect. We're going to create everything from scratch. Well, we're using like an Avengers style font, but we even need to tweak the font. So we're going to start in Adobe Illustrator and we're going to build out this effect over to Photoshop. Don't worry if you don't have Adobe Illustrator. You can head over to tutvid.com and you can download the .eps files that we drag into Photoshop to create this effect if you have no interest in Illustrator or whatever. Head over to tutvid.com. There's a link right in the bio where you can get to that. Now, also in the bio, I should add, are all of these links. A couple fonts that you're going to want to download if you're following the tutorial, and then a bunch of brushes. All this stuff is free. Don't worry. You don't have to pay for anything if you don't have that, money. And we also have two textures here that we use in the tutorial. These are the exact brushes and the exact textures that I'm using in this tutorial that you're about to watch. If you're watching this tutorial, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, and these links are broken, these brushes and resources are not still available, don't worry. Virtually any grunge brush, as long as it's a decent grunge brush that's similar to what we're using, and a similar kind of scratchy, very fine scratches on a metal type surface, that kind of texture. If you have that stuff, you can follow along with this tutorial and you shouldn't have any issue at all. These are just the exact resources that I'm using. So I'm going to minimize that. I'm actually going to pop open Adobe Bridge here. And what I've got in Adobe Bridge is I've downloaded that stuff and I've saved it all into one little file here. So I've got all that stuff there. Of course, the two fonts aren't here because I've installed the fonts on my system. But I recommend that you just save everything into one folder because we're going to be accessing this stuff somewhat regularly when we get to the Photoshop portion of this tutorial. Well, the bulk of the tutorial is Photoshop. So that's it. That's all sort of the general housekeeping that we need to worry about. Let's jump over to the Adobe Illustrator and get started, where I have a new document that I've created. And this document is 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. So 1920 wide by 1080 tall. And what we're going to do is we're going to type out the word that we want to, apply this Avengers style to. And we're going to stick with just the word Avengers. So I'm going to type out Avengers. Boom, I just typed Avengers. We're getting off to a good start here. All right, so now I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and I'm just going to scale this a little bit bigger so we can see what's going on here. It's right there, bam, in the middle of my Adobe Illustrator artboard. Now, I'm going to choose from my font drop-down that Avenger, whatever it is, Vengeance Heroic Avenger font. There we go. We have our Avengers font. Now, I know that the size that I want for this size document is 415 points. Looks a little unruly right now. Don't worry. I'm going to actually zoom out one tick like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we have Align to Artboard ticked on when we select our little alignment options. And we're going to align the horizontal center and the vertical center, just like that. Blammo. We have it dropped right there into the middle of our document. Now I'm going to head back over to the bridge right there, and I'm going to drag in this reference image. Now, we're not going to be really using the reference image in Illustrator other than just to double check, make sure our letters are looking right. A couple of these letters need to be rounded, and we're probably going to need to redraw the A altogether because it's not all that great with the font. So I'm just going to drag this from the bridge, drop it over here into Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to flip it back to Illustrator, and I'll just drag this right up over here, and just so it's kind of there so we can take a look at it as we need to. So the first thing I'm noticing is the corners of the E are rounded, the middle part of the E has that slant, right? The G rounded. It does have the little hook down. I don't know if we'll do that in our effect. The E again needs to be rounded, and the S also will do the round on those two sort of outside corners of the S. So let's begin by tweaking the text. So we're going to do this by selecting the text with our Move tool, and we're just going to simply right-click and choose Create Outlines. This is going to sort of take it from being live type and make it editable path-based shapes. Illustrator no longer knows that this is text. We're also going to right-click again and just choose Ungroup. So now we can just select any one of these letters that we want individually and work with it. So that's great. Now that we've done that, we're going to grab the pen tool, and I'm going to zoom in here on the E. So the pen tool, the hotkey for that is just the letter P. And I'm going to begin, I'm just going to kind of draw a path out, kind of, I don't know, something like that. And then I'm just going to draw this up and over. Whoops, sorry, I right-clicked there. There we go. And then I'll just join that right there. Now, to be able to differentiate the shape from everything else that's going on here, I'm going to fill the shape with an orangey, reddy color, something like that. In fact, I'm actually going to, just select that anchor point with my direct selection tool. And I'm just going to make the rounded corners just a little bit bigger. I really need to zoom in here because I kind of want to make sure that I'm lined up perfectly with the edge of the E. Whoop, there we go. We can just pull this handle back a little bit that way. So it takes a little bit of tweaking, but don't worry. We're just basically going to make 2 of these corners, and we're going to copy these corners to every other, rounded edge that needs to be made. So the other corner we need to do is down here. So with the pen tool again, we're going to start right about here, let's say. Extend that to there, and then bring it around to about there. That looks pretty good. And then let's just, whoops, once again, I right-clicked. Let's just bring it around, and join it up. All right, so now what we can do is we can actually select any of these corners, right? If we move it away, you can see the E is still intact. We haven't actually cut anything yet. Don't worry about that yet. What we're going to do is we're going to duplicate these shapes and move them to the corners that we need. Now, obviously, it's a no-brainer. We have a second E. So let's actually just click one, hold down our Shift key, click the other. Now I'm going to hold down, let go of the Shift key. I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key and just drag this straight across. Actually, I'm going to hold down my Shift key again to make sure that it remains perfectly straight. And right there looks just about perfect, right? So we're going to cut both of our E's exactly the same way. We need to go ahead and cut the tip of the G. Now, the tip of the G is kind of more of an acute angle, so we're going to take this one here, and we're going to copy it, Command-or-Control-C, paste it, Command-or-Control-V. I'm going to move it right up to here. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit, and what we're going to do is we're just going to flip this by going Object, Transform, Reflect, and we're going to reflect it. Let's tick on Preview. We're going to reflect it along the vertical axis, and we're also going to reflect it along the horizontal axis. So just like that. We should be able to bring this over and get pretty close to a nice rounded corner. We may need to go in and just make sure that it's not off by, like just a hair of a pixel, right? That's off. That's probably close enough. It's not as perfect as I would like it to be. You know what? Let's be fussy here. Let's line this up as nicely as we can. All right, so we're pretty good there. Right. Boom. All right, that's probably pretty close. Good, so we would have the G being rounded, both the E's being rounded, and now, we got to get the 2 corners of the S as well. So we're going to go ahead. These basically are going to be the same kind of corner as the G, so I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key to copy this, and I'll hold my Shift key down as well. Well, once I start dragging, then hold my Shift key down to keep it straight. And let's just move this over. Again, we're going to try to get it as perfect as possible, so let's zoom in and take a closer look at this guy. There we go. Cool. That looks good. All right, now we can zoom out, and we're going to use the same shape. So let's just duplicate the shape. I'm holding on my Alt or Option key and just dragging out another copy of that. And we're going to flip this every which way again. So we can go Object, Transform, Reflect. We're going to do it along the horizontal axis and the vertical. Come to think of it, we probably could have just copied it from the bottom of the E where we have it, over here, right there. But whatever. We did it this way too. All right, so let's now take this and try to line this guy up as closely as possible. Right. Somewhere around there looks good. Oh, no, that's still off a little bit. Let's try that again. There we go. Something like that's much, much closer. Not quite 1,000% perfect, but you know what? Good enough for right now. So I believe those are all the corners that we're going to round for now. So now here is how the rounding process works. We're going to use the Pathfinder panel, which you can find under Window, Pathfinder, right there. Pathfinder panel is insanely powerful. It's amazing. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to grab one of the shapes and the letter that you want to round. So I just select one, hold down my Shift key, select the other, and then I'm going to choose this minus front option. Boom. We just chopped the corner of the E. Now we select the E again, grab the other little bit, minus front, whammo. Great. Let's do it with the G, minus front. Great. Let's go with the E. Whoa, hello. Let's go with the E and just the top piece. There we go. Chop that. Go with that. Boom. Chopped that. Great. Let's go with the S here. Minus front. See, it's pretty fast once you get the pieces in place. So now that we've done that, we can close the Pathfinder panel, and we've now rounded the corners of text that we need rounded based on our little reference image here, which is now sliding off screen. Now, the next thing that we want to look at is fixing the angle. See, we've got this little angular portion on our G and the angles on the E's. So here's what we're going to do. This should be pretty simple. We're going to grab the direct selection tool. So that's this tool right here beneath the move tool, direct selection tool. And we're going to just select that anchor point right there on the bottom of the E and just use our left arrow key and go 1, 2, 3. Whoop, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to move that back out. I'm going to hold down my shift key and go 1, 2, 3. Something like that probably looks good. It's a pretty severe angle. So now that we know we did that, we held the shift key and pressed the left arrow key 3 times. We'll do the same thing over here. Shift, 1, 2, 3. Great. All right, now with the G, what I want to do, you can see that the top pointed area is actually, it's kind of a smaller point and there's length here. So what I want to do is I want to move both of these anchor points here up to about here and then make the point. So I'm actually going to drag a selection over that area. See, there's 2 anchor points. Ignore the little circular dots. That's just a feature of Adobe Illustrator. And I'm going to move up. I'm not even really counting with my arrow keys. I'm just trying to make sure the G still looks kind of like it's supposed to. In fact, we can select this anchor point, hold down the shift key, select this anchor point, and just move the G this way just to make it a little bit more narrow. That actually might not be a bad thing. In fact, let's do that here with both of these anchor points as well. Just bump them back a little bit. Now we'll take this anchor point and we're just going to move it up, 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 right, until we get a nice point. Something like that. Well, you know what? Maybe if I drag it, since we have our snapping turned on, it'll just snap right to the corner and give us a perfect corner. Great. So now with the G, we have a nice angled edge. Maybe not even as small as I would like it, but good enough for what we're working on. And really the next thing that we want to look at is figuring out this A situation. So what I'm going to do is we're going to look up here at the reference image and we're going to copy this A. I'm going to show you how we're going to do it. It's actually really, really easy. The first thing I'm going to do, however, is come over here. Well, I just selected this little flyout menu on my layers panel, and I'm going to choose panel options, other, and I'm going to make my thumbnails about 60 pixels large. It's going to make it a little bit easier for us to see what's going on here. One of the things that I want to change is open up my layer here, and you can see we've got this linked file, which is our reference image, just kind of plopped into the middle. I'm going to click in this open area between the eyeball and the colored bar. That's going to lock that linked layer. That way I never accidentally select it or shift it, because what we're about to do is use this as reference. We're going to use it as reference for making our A and this circular little circle that goes around the A. So grab the pen tool. If you've never used the pen tool, don't worry. This is honestly as easy as just clicking and clicking and clicking. There's no dragging, there's no Bezier curves, none of that stuff. All right, so we're going to start right here in this corner. We're going to trace along the inside of this silvery metal looking stuff. So we're going to click and add right there. I'm going to hold down my shift key to drag a perfectly straight line. Now we're coming all the way down the line here. See, I mean, it's just a matter of just following this line, clicking. There's no tangent handles, none of that nonsense. There we go, click there, boom, click there. Coming right through the inner part of this arrow. That's great. Right there. And of course, right there. Right there. Come across the bottom there. We're coming right through the middle of this A. Right there. That looks good. Come right down to there. All right. And then we join our path. So we've traced the initial part of the A. Of course, we need to get this little triangle down here. So I'm going to start right there. I'm going to go to right about there. Hold my shift key and come straight down. Whoop, not to there. Come all the way down to the base. There we go. Then bring it over. Whoop, nope, we don't want to join it. We need to zoom in here because the snapping feature in Illustrator wants me to join. Right there. I'm going to click. Whoop. Make sure I select that anchor point. Hold down the shift key. Now we're drawing a part of that path again. And then join them just like that. Sorry about that. A little bit of confusion maybe. All right, so we have our shapes. They all line up really well. Now before we go and do anything to this, what we can do is we can just drag a selection over both of these. And I think that we should fill them. Well, let's select over here in the swatches panel, select the stroke, and just hit the little slash. That's going to get rid of the stroke. We're just going to fill this. Well, make sure you select the fill swatch. We're going to fill this with a blue color. All right. So our letter A is now filled with a nice blue color. What we now need to do is use a shape tool to draw the circle. So what shape tool would make sense? Probably the ellipse tool. And Photoshop says, hey, have you tried the new shaper tool? Yes, I have, but not going to work for what we're doing here. All right, so let's hold down the shift key and drag out a big circular selection. Now remember, our selection needs to follow the inside of that sort of silver, metallic, stone, whatever that material is that is being used there. All right, so something Something probably right about like that is good. Now, here's a something tricky that we need to do. We need to grab the Move tool. We're going to copy this circle. So Command or Control-C to copy the circle. Now, we're going to open up our Layers panel, and we're going to hide this initial old ellipse because we need to now guide our new ellipse so it follows the other side of this circle. We're essentially going to create a very thin donut that's going to run around in a circle just like that. So we hide the other ellipse, and then we go Edit, Paste in Front. Note the hotkey Command F. This is, think of it as a paste in place. Well, there is a paste in place, so I guess we could use that. We're still going to go with paste in front because we do actually want this ellipse to be in front. So there we go. We're going to paste in front. Now I'm going to hold down my Shift and Alt. That'd be Shift and Option on the Mac keys. And I'm going to scale this down. All right, I went too far, so I'm going to scale it back up, still holding Shift and Alt. Scale it right up to about there. You see how we're now following the interior line on the inside, still the inside of that grayish stone metal looking material. All right, so now that we've done that, we can turn our other ellipse back on. I'm going to select both of these circles now. So I've got the top circle selected, hold down my Shift key and select the other circle. We're going to go back to Window Pathfinder, open the Pathfinder panel, and we're going to use that same exact icon, this minus front option. It's going to punch a hole right through our circle. Now to differentiate, the circle from the letter A, let's just fill this with the color green. So we have a green circle and a blue letter A. What we now need to do is cut the circle down so it's actually like the other circle. So what we're going to do is we're going to hide the letter A and that little triangular path just so we don't mess anything up. And I'm going to come over here. Underneath the eraser tool is the knife tool. Very useful for a lot of different things. Basically, you use it to just cut a line right across a shape like that. Great. And we're also going to cut a line right through there. So you can see if you look in the Layers panel, we've divided our donut-shaped path into two pieces. This piece right here, select it with that circle there, we can delete. We can get rid of it. We don't need it. We're going to make the exact cut for our circle in a little bit when we figure out exactly how our letter A is going to be shaped and sized and all of that. So obviously now we can just get rid of the Pathfinder panel. We're going to turn our A layer back on and the little, the smaller part of the A. We're going to select all of this stuff. So we're going to select the half circle and both bits of the A. Don't worry, we're going to clean up and make this the circle around the A exactly precise in a little bit. But it's very important that we select all of this stuff. Oh, I right-clicked. It's very important that we select all of this stuff and now move it into place. So what I'm going to do, I've got it all three pieces selected. I'm going to drag it down off of that Avengers reference image and into place down here where I think it belongs, where it's going to end up going. And we want to scale all this stuff together because the size of the circle, the placement of the circle directly corresponds and is always going to directly correspond with the size of the A. And obviously we need to make the A larger. So all three of these pieces, the circle, the A, and the little triangular piece, they all need to be selected together and scaled together. So let's hold down our Shift key so we make sure we're constraining proper proportions, and we're going to just drag this size up, make it a little bit taller than the old A because you can see here it's kind of lifting it off of its base down here at the bottom. I'm going to grab the Move tool. The hotkey for that is the letter V. I'm going to move these letters down into, this letter down into place, and that's probably about as far away from the V as we want to be. That looks pretty good, and it looks like, the bottom is aligned with where the bottom of the old A is. That looks great. We can zoom out. Now, at this point, we can select the old A and get rid of it. So we have our new A. We've got the circle. Everything looks great. Now, here's where things get a little tricky. We need to clean up the circle, right? We need to chop off these ends and even give a little bit of space, as you can see, in between where the circle would sort of meet or bump into the A. So we're going to do that by using something called offset path. So we're going to begin here with the A. And once that's selected, you can see we just need to select the A. We don't need to select the little triangular shape. Just the A, not the circle, nothing else. Just the A. We're going to go Object, Path, Offset Path, and we're going to choose to offset it by 18 pixels. This is going to, as you see, essentially expand the path outward 18 pixels. And you may be thinking, oh, that really looks kind of bad now. And it does, but what we need to do is we need to cut this shape because it needs to be on top of our circular shape. You can even see in the Layers panel, this compound path that we just created, while it is selected, it's below the path. So we can cut this, Command or Control X. We can actually just drag it up in the Layers panel just like that, but you can do a cut and paste in front kind of job, right? Edit, cut, and then paste in front, and that would do the same thing. Now that we have this compound path, holding down the Shift key, we're also going to select the little circular donut shape that we have. Now we're going to go Window, and of course back to our good old Pathfinder. I don't know why I keep closing it. And we're going to choose, again, minus front. So it's going to chop down in 3 places our donut shape. That's great. Now all we need to do is essentially the same exact thing with the letter V. So we chop the circular shape down here at the bottom of the V. So I'm going to select the V. Again, we're going Object, Path. Whoops. Let's try that again. Object, Path, Offset Path. 18 pixels is the right size. There we go. We're going to select, now see, I don't see the V in my layers panel. I don't want to drag it that long distance. So I'm just going to go Edit Cut. Oh, it disappears. That's actually good. Then we're going to go Edit, Paste in Front. Boom. It's now above our little piece of green. Hold down my Shift key. Select that green shape once again. Choose the minus front. We get some craziness going on because we have this this layer, these paths are now a group because you can see we chopped that layer in half. So this is a little bit of an unforeseen problem, but here's how we solve this issue. We just select it. Let's go right click and choose ungroup. So now we can just select this one path as an object. We can select the big V-shaped something or other, and now we can just hit minus front, knock that out. And if we want to bring it back to the way it was, we can select both green shapes, hit Command or Control G, it groups them right back up. So you can see now we have the correct shapes. In fact, I can select all of this stuff here, and we can just go ahead and fill it with black. So we have Avengers, with the little semi-half circle thing. I'm going to get rid of the Pathfinder panel again. I know, at my own peril. That's fine. So we have all of this stuff kind of the way we want. The shapes look good. One of the things that I'm going to do now is sort of create an outline for this entire thing, because as you see with the actual Avengers text, we do have the inner workings of the text. Remember when we traced the A, we only traced that inner red part. We still need to make sure that when we take this to Photoshop, we're going to have the bits for the outside, that sort of metallic stone border, if you will. So here's how we're going to do that. We're going to select all of this text. Boom, text and shapes, I should say. And we're going to hit Command or Control G to group it up into one group. Now what we're going to do is apply that same offset path, but this time we're not going to do it by 18 pixels because that would be far too big. So we're going to go Object Path, Offset Path, and half of 18 is 9. But you can see there's a tiny little gap here. So if we have two 9-pixel edges meeting, there's going to be no gap. So let's go with like an offset of 7 pixels, and we'll hit OK. You can see we still have tiny little gaps. That's great. That's kind of what we want. Now, this is all grouped together in one big crazy group. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to ungroup this whole thing now. So maybe actually we shouldn't have grouped it. Oh, look, we have the option to group. Let's select this whole thing. Let's try right-clicking on it again. And there we go, and choose ungroup. So now everything is ungrouped. We still want to have everything kind of together in groups. So I know it all looks the same, but you can see, like when I hover over the A, I'm selecting the inner part of the A. When I get to the outside, then I'm selecting the path for the outer A, or the border of the A. I want to select all the inner pieces. So I'm going to hold down my Shift key, just start selecting all of the inner pieces. You can sort of see how the outline is showing up, right? There we go. All right, great. So we have all the inner parts of the Avengers text. I'm going to hit Command or Control G to group them together. All right. Whoop. Okay, so let's undo that. What happened here is the circle going around the A, all of those pieces are grouped together within they're like in a subgroup. You can see they're in a group here. So we actually need to right-click on that and choose Ungroup again. Now we can select all the bits and pieces. There we go. I know, it's a little tedious, but you only have to do it once. There we go. Group that together. Let's shut that group off. You can see now we have sort of our bigger, bulkier Avengers text, and we're going to group this as well. So now we have everything broken up into two different groups. So now what we're going to do is apply a little bit of color just so we can see the differentiation between them, because right now it just looks like ugly Avengers text. We can see we have a couple little things we need to tweak and adjust, right? It's not quite pixel perfect, if you will. We're going to fix all that stuff. Don't worry. So let's begin with the outline text. The color for this, let's open up our color picker here, is going to be, let's go with C6, C6, C6. It's a very light gray. Hit OK. Boom. All right, you can see there we now have our outline. And now we can select the text that's going into the middle, and let's choose a different red. And this one I have written down. It's E21331. And it's sort of this, I don't know, pinkish red color. There we go. So we have all of our Avengers text lined up. I believe at this point we can delete our reference image. We're kind of rolling as we should be here. So let's unlock the reference image. We can select it. Boom, delete. Great. At this point, you might want to save your image or your document as well. But of course, that's all up to you. So let's just zoom in on this and take a look at a couple things. You can see here, like with the E, it's not perfectly lined up the way it should be. We'll adjust that. Maybe the point there is a little bit too close to the letter next to it, so we'll back that up just a little bit, right? See how the G has a nice little bit of space. We'll do that with both of our E's. That's good. This doesn't line up quite as perfectly as we would like it to, so we're going to adjust that and at least make sure that this outer edge lines up with the V. We got some issues here, so we'll just correct that. It's just a couple pixels off. I know it looks ugly. This actually doesn't look too bad. That kind of looks pretty consistent. We may need to just tweak the top of the arrow a little bit. All pretty easy stuff. Everything else looks pretty solid. I like it. All right, so let's begin with the easy stuff here, down here at the bottom of the E's. Now, here is something very important. Remember, we're dealing with two different groups of artwork. So not only do we have to select the bottom right-hand anchor point of the E for the red text, we need to hold down our Shift key and select it with the gray as well and bump it over. 1, 2, 3, 4. That looks pretty good. I think that lined it up pretty well. So we know that it's 4. We need to bump it over. Let's do that right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Boom. All right, the bottom of the E looks good. Let's do the same thing here with this. Let's pull it back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, I kind of like that. 5. Let's go back to the other E. Select both of those points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Cool. Dunzo. Love it. All right, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to mess around with the little circular piece. I'm going to select both of these, and I'm just going to try shifting them out like that first. All right, let's undo that because we've got a point here that needs to follow with us. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, so I bumped that over about 10. Maybe this needs to be bumped over 1, 2, something like that, just to keep kind of the space between the corners looking natural. All right, let's just see if we can bump this as well without it getting kind of like crazy and looking weird. So we'll bring it so it's pretty much lined up, but not quite. I think if I go any thinner, it's going to be really kind of noticeable. All right, so now we're going to go with this. Let's select the two top points, and let's just try bumping them down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's about right, right? That looks pretty even there. Let's select now this and this. I think these need to go like up over. Maybe not. Maybe just down. Something like that. That looks pretty good. All right, cool. I think we pretty much did that. We certainly, I think, have it close enough. It's looking pretty good. This is all editable artwork now that we can edit and do whatever we want with it, generally speaking. It's vector artwork, so we can scale it as big as we want, as small as we want. We're not copying some image, and it's all based on paths. That's the power of doing this in Adobe Illustrator. It's all path-based, so going and tweaking a couple little lines is super easy. I know it's taken us a little bit of time to actually create this, but now that we have it created, we have an immense amount of flexibility. So one of the last things that we're going to do in Adobe Illustrator is place each of these on their own artboard. So if we open up the artboard panel, which you can go Window Artboards, by the way, we have Artboard 1, which is what you begin with. Let's create another artboard. It's just going to be called, hey, Artboard 2. The reason we're doing this is because if we have separate artboards in Adobe Illustrator, we can place pieces of artwork on each of these artboards and export them individually. So we can have our outline exported as one EPS file and our internal red text exported as another EPS file. So we don't have to sort through, Illustrator layers or any kind of mixing and matching and just mixed up, muddled up, messed up stuff in Photoshop when this Adobe Illustrator file is ready to go to Photoshop, which is going to be very, very soon, might I add. So let's just select our red text and drag it over here to Artboard 2. All right, before we do anything with the red text on Artboard 2, let's select the gray text on Artboard 1. Note I have Artboard 1 selected here in my Artboard panel. You can see it zooms me right into it, in fact, when I click on it. We want to again make sure we're aligning to the artboard, and just once again make sure the horizontal and vertical centers are all aligned. All right, great. Now we're going to come do that with the red text. All right, we're going to go align the horizontal center and the vertical center like that. Now, if you noticed, when I select the artwork, it automatically selects Artboard 1. When I select the red text, it automatically selects Artboard 2. If you're having an issue, like you select this and when you hit Align, it aligns to Artboard 1, you just want to make sure you select Artboard 2 in your Artboards panel because that's the artboard that Illustrator is going to align to, okay? So now that we've done this, we have two separate artboards. We can export this one .ai file as two separate EPS files. So let's do that. Let's go File, Export, And I'm just going to go right to the desktop here. Format is going, oh, you know what am I thinking? Let's not do that. Let's just save these out. We'll just go save as. We'll go to the desktop. We're going to say illustrator.eps file, and we're going to check on use artboards. And we're going to say all because we want both of them. We could actually say range 1, 2. It's probably going to export some extra stuff, but that's fine. I'm just going to call this Avengers text vector, something like that. We're going to know what it is. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save. It's going to ask me for some stuff. Don't worry about that. Just go with the default. Hit OK. And it's going to export those .eps files very, very quickly. And over here in the Adobe Bridge, we can see, while I've dragged those .eps files into our working folder, we have the original .ai as well. We don't need to worry about that. These two .eps files are the files that you can download right here, right now, over at tutvid.com. Use the link to the article that's right down in the description of this video. If you don't have Adobe Illustrator or you wanted to skip over that whole part of the tutorial, trust me, I completely understand. I've got them ready for you, and you can follow right along with exactly what we're doing. So let's jump to Photoshop real quick, and we're going to create a new document, Command or Control-N, width 1920, height 1080. I know we're heading into the 4K era. Well, we're kind of in the 4K era. I'm going to stick with 1080p for this. If you want to create something that's bigger, you can. However, we're going to be using some layer styles and brush sizes and things like that. Everything that I'm doing in this tutorial corresponds to a 1920 by 1080 pixel document size. You're going to need to scale things up or size things up at your discretion if you're going to go with a larger or smaller file size. So 1920 by 1080 is what I'm beginning with. Hit OK. And I'm going to open up all these panels on this side here so we can see what we're doing. Now, the first thing that we want to do is add a fill layer down here at the bottom, or actually we can just fill our background layer. Double-click on the foreground color. We're going to give it a nice dark blue color for the background, so it really looks like we're working on like the Avengers text. So I'm going to go 0D 1521. Very, very deep blue. Option delete, Alt backspace on the PC. There we go. We've got a nice background now that we're working with. Now, we're going to go back to the Adobe Bridge, and we're going to drag both of these .eps files into Photoshop. So I'm going to drag them, and I'm going to drop them right in my document, just like so. You can see they're going to center themselves automatically. That looks great. There's the gray text. Hit the Enter Return key. There's the red text. Enter Return. Ah, look at that. We got the outline for our text. We've got the inner guts of our text. Everything looks pretty good. It's pretty much lined up just about the way that I want it to be. All right, we're going to begin here with adding some layer styles for the edges. So I'm going to shut off the red text so we can just work with the gray text. We're going to go layer. We're going to go layer style. And we're going to begin with a nice little... actually, let's go with the bevel and emboss first. We'll add the gradient overlay to it in just a minute. So the bevel and emboss we're going to do, it's going to be very subtle. There's going to be a lot of subtlety that we work with today, but, you know, 10 layers of subtlety equal a 100% better product. So subtlety is key. So don't worry if we're working through something, you think nothing's changing, zoom in, take a look at, you know, really what you're working on up close. There's always a difference that's being made. So we're going to go with the style of inner bevel. We're going to go with chisel hard. It's a little bit more, you know, cut metal, cut concrete looking, kind of what we want here. We're going to reduce the depth to 100%, leave the direction as up. We're going to leave the size at 1. We're going to leave soften at 0. We're going to change the angle to 24. That's what I have written down as a good angle. Altitude can remain at 37. That's great. Highlight color, or the highlight mode, is going to be normal with a color of white. But we're just going to reduce the opacity to 0, so I guess none of that really matters. Then here on the shadow mode, we're going to kind of crank this up a little bit. So we're going to crank it up to 100% opacity, so we have a nice strong shadow, but not really any kind of highlight, or in fact, no highlight at all because the opacity is 0%. Great. We've added a bevel and emboss, a very subtle bevel and emboss. Next up, gradient overlay. So here in the gradient overlay, we're going to apply a gradient that we actually want to color our text. So I'm going to set the blend mode to normal, and we're going to set the opacity to 100%. Now the gradient here, this is kind of important. Well, semi-important, you know, relatively speaking. Well, we can see, first of all, that I'm going to hit OK like this. We're going to uncheck reverse. I want this, your default probably is not going to have reverse checked on. So black starts at the bottom, going to white at the top. We're going to open up the gradient editor, and we know that our darker gray here, we want it at the bottom. So we're going to open this up, and this is going to be D9, D9, D9. So it's like a darker, it's still a very light gray, but darker than what's going on this end, because what's going on this end is essentially just off-white. F5, 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 hit OK, hit OK. I believe this is all that we need right there. Good. All right. So Now we have our kind of the outline or the edges of our text set as far as like a gradient, just running very subtly, a very light dark gray to a very light gray. Now we're going to turn on the red text, which of course is the interior, and we need to apply a bunch of layer styles and then texturize and grungify and grit this thing up. So first thing we need to do is select that red text layer. We're actually going to change our foreground and background colors. So we're going to set the foreground color here to the color of 9A141B, right? It's like a very dark wine red almost, maybe not quite that dark. Then the background color. We're going to set this to D7, where do I have this written down? 1F2B, so a bit of a lighter red color. Foreground is darker, background is lighter. Now that we've done that, with this text, we're going to go layer style, gradient overlay. There we go. And the gradient we're going to choose is not the same gradient as the edges, but rather just a foreground to background gradient. Why? Because, well, we just changed our foreground and background colors, so they're filled in exactly as we need them with a darker red at the bottom, the lighter red at the top. That looks great. If something looks funky, again, you can just hit the little reverse button, and that'll flip your colors. So if you're looking at it like your dark reds on top, light reds on the bottom, you got the little reverse button always there at your fingertips. Next up, we need to add a bevel and emboss and actually a contour as well. I'm going to zoom in here on our text just so we can get a really good look at what we're doing here as we start to build our bevel and emboss and, in fact, this whole text effect. So let's begin by checking on bevel and emboss. Now, it's still the very subtle bevel and emboss that we applied to our outer edge. We don't necessarily want to keep that, so we're going to just go inner bevel, chisel hard still. We're going to increase the depth a little bit. We're going to go like 175 on the depth. Think of depth as like the intensity level of your highlights and shadows. I know you also control them with your opacity down here, but depth is like directly corresponding to how intense these things look. We're going to keep it set to up. Now, in this case, we're going to crank the size up to 8, so you can see, whoa, we just made kind of a change there, right? Don't worry if it looks horrific. We're going to change things here in a little bit. Soften will still be 0. The angle we're going to change to 90, all right? So the shadow completely changes where it is. And for altitude, we're going to increase that just a little bit, like 42, 45, something like that. I've got 42 written down here on my little cheat sheet. We're going to change the gloss contour to this one right here. It's called Ring. It's a preset. You should have it if you have Photoshop. Yikes, that looks pretty bad. Don't worry, we're going to fix this. We're going to fix it, I promise. We're going to set the highlight blend mode to color dodge, and we're going to adjust the opacity to about 50%. So right there like that. Whereas the shadows, we're going to basically set that to 0. So completely get rid of the shadows. We're not going to basically do that. We are going to do that. And you can see we have kind of this interesting, almost retro-looking effect being applied to the edges of our text. We got a little ways to go here, so don't judge too quickly. All right, next up, we're going to tick on the little contour option. And for the contour, we're going to go with the half-round contour, and we're going to set the range to somewhere around 50%. So I got whatever, 51%. That's fine. So we've got a bevel and emboss and a contour now added to our red text. Now we need to add a stroke to the red text, and we need to add multiple inner shadows. So we're going to go about this kind of in an interesting way. Let's go with the stroke first because this is easy for all of us. With the stroke, we're going to add the stroke. We're going to keep the size at 3 pixels. That's good. We're going to position. That's going to be the inside. So all of our corners are nice and sharp and straight and all of that good stuff. The opacity is going to remain at 100%. And I guess we'll just leave the color, the fill color there as black. So black will be perfect for our stroke. And now we need to begin adding inner shadows. So in newer versions of Photoshop, we can add an inner shadow, and then we can add another inner shadow, and another inner shadow, and as many inner shadows as we want. I'm going to delete these extra inner shadows, however, because I'm going to show you how to do this if you don't have one of the newer versions of Photoshop and you still need to add these 3 inner shadows. We're actually going to have a 4th inner shadow come in here in a little bit, but this is how we would do it. So we're going to work here. This is any version of Photoshop this works in. We're going to work with one single inner shadow for now. We'll add the others in just a second. So with this inner shadow, what we're going to do is we're going to set the opacity here to 35%. Well, let's give it we're going to give it a nice dark red color, almost black, very dark, so 42080 OC, that'll work. An opacity of 35% looks good. And then we're going to set the angle here to just 90, so it's going to be sort of a straight up and down inner shadow, as you can see. The distance is going to be 15. The size, not choke, we want no choke. if I can hit the tab key, there we go, and the size 1. So the size is basically the amount of blur on the edge of that inner shadow. So there we go, we've added an inner shadow. Now, let's say, as I mentioned before, you have a version of Photoshop where you can't just go inner shadow, inner shadow, inner shadow. Here's what you would do. You would duplicate this Avengers text layer by hitting Command or Control J. Then you would right-click on it and choose Clear Layer Style to get rid of everything we put on there. Uh-oh, we lost all of our effects. Well, we didn't because they're all down here still. Don't worry about that. Now what you would do is set your fill opacity to 0%. Hey, our effects came back. You now have a blank layer which can carry an additional layer style. So you would go Layer, Layer Style, Inner Shadow. And you could place your additional inner shadow. You would have to do this, create one of these layers for every additional inner shadow that we wanted to create. So that's how you get around this with an older version of Photoshop. I'm going to delete that because I have the newer version of Photoshop, so I'm just going to hit the little plus icon and add another inner shadow. All right, so for the second inner shadow, we're going to set our color to just straight on black. We're not going to mess around with a darker red or anything fancy schmancy like that. We're going to set the opacity down to like 25%. That looks good. We're going to change our angle here rather drastically. We're going to set it to 160 degrees. So now we have a shadow running along sort of the left side of our text. I like it. We're going to set the distance. We're going to reduce the distance a little bit, maybe make it 7. So this is going to be a heavier inner shadow just along that very edge. And the size is going to remain at 1 pixel. There we go. We need to add yet another inner shadow. So a third inner shadow now. This one is going to go back up to an opacity of 35%. We're still using the color black, don't worry. This one's going to have an angle of 150, so just slightly offset from our shadow just a second ago. The distance is going to be 13 pixels. And the size here is going to be 0. So this is going to have a very sharp edge. There's absolutely no blur on the edge of that inner shadow. We can hit OK now because we need to actually add a second bevel and emboss to our rapidly coming along Avengers text. And I don't know if you noticed, but there's no second bevel and emboss option. So I'm hanging with you guys with the older versions of Photoshop here because we need to duplicate this Avengers text layer, Command or Control J. We need to right click. What did we say? Clear layer style, great. Reduce the fill opacity to Zippo. And now we can add our second bevel and emboss. We can go layer, layer style, bevel and emboss. Great. Again, we'll zoom in so we can see what is going on here. So with this bevel and emboss, we're going to go with inner bevel, chisel hard, just like we've been doing. We're going to stick with 175% for our depth. Up, a size of 8 is great. Soften at 0. Here we're going to set the angle to 24, however, so we're going to change things up a little bit. The altitude, we're going to reduce it back down to that 37 that we had before. The gloss contour can remain that ring preset setting. That works great for what we've got going on here. On the highlight, we're going to set it to color dodge with the color of white. Great. Opacity of 50%. And we're going to leave the shadow mode completely set down to 0. Now, we are also going to tick on contour, and we can just leave it where it is because it's going to pick up the settings we last used before, which is that half-round contour with a range of about 50%. So that's great. We're also, I believe, we want to add an inner shadow to this while we're here. You may be saying, well, why didn't we just add a fourth inner shadow to the one before? Because I didn't think about it, maybe. I don't know. So we're going to go ahead and add another inner shadow here. So just hit the little plus icon to throw an inner shadow on this layer. And we're going to use the normal blend mode, and we're going to change the color here. Let me find the color that I've written down. It's 65 0F15. So it's this very dark red. It's going to be pretty close to that original initial dark red we used on our very, very first inner shadow. But we're going to go with that here. Hit OK. Opacity is going to go up. Let's try 100%. We're going to really have a dark red influence up there. We're going to change the angle once again. We're going to adjust it just slightly. Again, it's all subtleties, a lot of subtleties. Reduce the distance to about 10 pixels. Now here we're going to give this a little bit of blur. So about a size of 2 pixels. That's going to give us just help kind of rub it together just a little bit. So that looks great. And you know what? We're going to throw a gradient overlay on this as well. So let's add a gradient overlay. We're going to go with the default black to white gradient like that. You can see it's kind of looking crazy. Don't worry about that. We're going to just go ahead and reduce the opacity to about 30%. I'm thinking we should set this to the blend mode of overlay. There we go. That looks pretty good. So about 30%. You can see, shut the gradient off, turn the gradient on. That looks pretty good. You know what? I think let's go ahead and reverse this. We actually want to darken the top a little bit because we're going to influence this even more in a little bit as far as burning in the bottom. And this is going to help compensate for that down the road now that I'm looking at this kind of this way. In fact, we'll reduce the opacity just a little bit more. So we're kind of building this as we go. I don't have exact notes in front of me, but we're going to try to adjust and remain free and creative with this. So here we are. We've got a bunch of bevel and emboss and all kinds of other things applied. We're now ready to go in. We need to add like one last little highlight, and we're going to begin texturizing. So let's jump into it. So to add this highlight, it's pretty easy. It's just a couple steps. We're going to go ahead and Command click our red text layer. See, it just loads it as a selection. That's great. Then we're going to go up to Select, Modify, Contract. I don't know. Let's contract it by like 7 pixels. So it's going to suck that selection back in by 7 pixels. Great. We want to make sure that our foreground color is set to white. So I'm going to hit the letter D. It resets my foreground and background color to black and white. And then the letter X to flip them. So boom, white, my foreground color. Great. We're going to go Layer, New Fill Layer, Gradient. Now, because I have a selection loaded, it's going to use that selection as an automatic mask. Hit OK. You can see I have an automatic mask built in. And hey, look at that. I'm even going foreground to transparent, which is exactly what I wanted. Hit OK. I do, however, just want to hit reverse because I want the white to be up at the top. In fact, I'm going to open up the gradient editor. I'm going to drag the transparency handle here. I'm going to drag it back to around like 75% or something. That way the white is really just attacking the top parts of the letters. Hit OK. Hit OK. That looks great. We're going to set this layer blend mode to, let's go with overlay. Yeah, that looks cool. So we're really just going to light up the top of our layers. Again, just kind of taking control of exactly how the lighting is affecting our text. So there's what we had before and a few lighting changes, and we've really kind of adjusted it, I think, to the better. So now for some finer highlights, we're going to duplicate this red text layer just by holding our Alt or Option key and dragging it up above that new gradient layer we just created. Now that we've done that, we're going to right-click on this layer and just say, hey, clear the layer styles. We don't want any layer styles. What that's going to do, and you can see it turns that pinkish red again, it also resets the fill opacity to 100%. Don't be too concerned about that. What we're going to do is we're going to add a drop shadow. So we do need to just get rid of the fill again because we don't want the fill. The reason we're using fill opacity, by the way, and not opacity is because you can reduce fill opacity to 0%, but you still get the effects of the layer styles. So it allows us to preserve the layer styles without having to see the artwork that's carrying those layer styles, whereas opacity hides everything. So fill opacity, I'm going to rename this layer Fine Highlight, something like that. It's going to be a very subtle highlight we apply here. We're going to go Layer, Layer Style, Drop Shadow. And we're going to apply a drop shadow here. The blend mode can be normal. I think we're going to adjust that in a second. I do know that I want to set the color to white, and I'm gonna zoom in here on the text so I can really kind of see what's going on with this drop shadow. So right now we don't really see much of anything. Don't be too concerned with that. I'm going to set the blend mode. I'm going to change the blend mode to like color dodge. So that's really going to make it interact with the color underneath. I saw something change, but it was very, very subtle. I'm still not too concerned with it. Let's boost the opacity a little bit, maybe make it about 50, somewhere between 45 and 50. We're going to change the angle here. I want the angle really to be over here. So like -60, let's say. All right, that's good. We still don't see much of anything, so it's probably just because it's pushed way the heck out here. I mean, the distance is 7 after all, so let's reduce the distance to like 2, and maybe the size to 0. Let's see what that looks like. But, you know, we don't get concerned because we have some semblance of an idea of what's going on, right? Not really, but we pretend like we do. All right, so what we need to do is, it's there. I'm going to show you what exactly is going on in just a second, but before we get to that, actually, you know what? No, we can move this layer. Why not? Hold down your Shift key. See, I've got the Move tool now. Hold down your Shift key and just nudge this down 1. I'm holding my Shift key, so it bumps it like 10 pixels at a time, and nudge it to the right. So you can see we have kind of this little subtle highlight that's been created. I'm going to place that highlight like right there, right on the edge of the dark, dark shadow. So just like that, I've placed the highlight. Problem is, the highlight, you see it like runs over the gray outline. I don't want that. So I'm going to get rid of that by masking it. Well, before we mask this layer, I need to double click on FX, And just make sure I have this set layer mask hides effects. That way it actually hides it. Now I'm going to Command or Control click the original Avengers red text layer, so it brings that up as a selection. On my fine highlight layer, I can just hit the new mask icon. Boom, it masks that new shiny little highlight right there within our red text. Hey, look at that. It's looking so much better. All right, so we've added that inner brightness. We've added our fine highlight. Now it's time to add the first piece of texture. So let's jump over to Adobe Bridge. Now, here within Adobe Bridge, we can go to our Brushes and Textures folder. And the first texture I want to work with is this sort of powder blue, purplish, whatever color that is, looking texture. I'm just going to drag and drop it right into Photoshop. And it's going to say, hey, I'm preparing a smart object. Hold down my Shift and Alt key. I'm going to size this up like that. Then I'm going to hold my Shift key and I'm going to rotate it over on top of itself like that. Now I'm going to hold my Alt or Option key and just pull it out sideward just so the entire thing will cover the text. Enter or return to commit that change, and we now have our first texture in place. Now, the problem is I want to go and apply effects directly to this texture. I don't really care about preserving size or anything like that in the texture, so I don't care that it's a smart object. I want to right-click on this and choose Rasterize Layer. There's much more value to me to go in with the levels adjustment like we're going to do right now by going Image Adjustments, Levels, and do some wholesale changes to this texture and really make it work for us. So I'm going to drag the dark handle way over. So you can see it's giving us like this rich blue purple. I want it to go over even more than that, I think. It's going to let me. There we go. All right, something like that. We don't want to start seeing big solid blocks of color where it's starting to look really chunky. We don't want that at all. And we're going to pull the whites over just a little bit. Wrong way. We want to see a lot of that dark blue, and you'll see why in just a second. Let's hit OK. We're going to now desaturate this by hitting Command-Shift and the letter U. Desaturated. Now, we want all these scratch marks to look dark, and we want all the rest of the junk to be white. So we use the simple hotkey Command or Control-I to invert our texture. Now we can set this to a blend mode like Multiply, knock away all of the white, and just have this nice, black, scratchy-looking texture. So let's go ahead actually and do that, and then what we'll do is we'll actually mask this to the actual text itself. So we go blend mode, multiply. You can see we got all this black scratchiness now. All the white has just kind of dropped away. That's great. Let's zoom back out a little bit. Let's mask this to the text. So how do we do this? Well, for one, we can just hold down our Alt or Option key and click the mask on the layer beneath, drag it straight up onto that textures layer and drop it. It duplicates the mask, and now we have this nice texture which is masked within the red of our text. That's great. Let's try a different blend mode here. Let's go with something like Overlay. That's a little bit too heavy. I think I'm going to stick with Multiply. I like Multiply. And what we're going to do is just reduce the opacity a little bit, just so it doesn't appear, too heavy. Now what I'm going to do is, I don't really want all of this crazy scratching texture up near the top of the letters. So I'm going to grab the brush tool. I'm going to right-click, hit this little cog icon, and choose Replace Brushes. Now here's where we go about loading in all those brushes we downloaded, or at least some of them. I'm going to begin with the 52 grunge brushes.abr. It's one of the brush packs. Boom, double-click it. It's going to open. Just give it a second. And what I'm going to look for here are some of the larger brushes, like this one, 619 pixels. That's great. I'm working here. I want to make sure I have the mask selected. My foreground color should be set to black, and I'm going to go ahead and just start painting away. Make the brush a little bit larger here. Oh, by the way, you can right-click and just increase the size of your brush. I'm just going to start, clicking a couple times to sort of paint away grunge that's near the top of these letters. Right-click. Let's choose a different brush here. Let's go with this guy here and just paint some of this stuff away. We really want it to just kind of look, somewhat natural-ish. All right, so if we check out our alpha channel, you can see that our mask is pretty beat up. We just added a lot of texture to it. I'm Alt or Option clicking the mask, by the way, to get in and out of the mask like that. So we have this nice scratch texture that we've applied to the bottom of our text. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and add the metal texture that we also have over in Bridge. So let's jump over to Bridge, scratch metal, great. Let's drag that into Photoshop. Now for this, I'm going to rotate it on its side. I'm not going to size this up because what I like about this texture is it's very fine. It's got very fine scratches, and I like that. I want the scratches to be moving on an angle, almost like the same angle of the long part of the A. So with this texture, before I even drop it into Photoshop, I'm going to right-click and choose Skew. and I'm going to hold down my Alt or Option key and just skew it just kind of like that. There we go. Enter a return. It commits that. Great. Now what we want to do is right-click on this layer. Again, rasterize the layer. They're automatically imported as smart objects. We need to duplicate this, though, because you can see it's not big enough to reach to the end of our text. So Command or Control J to duplicate this layer, and then pull this straight over. I'm holding down my Shift key. And then I'm going to do a big Photoshop no-no here and use the Eraser tool. I'm going to use a fairly large and soft-edged eraser, and I'm going to click once right here, and I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click once right there, and it's just going to paint a really soft edge along my texture to just help blend that very dark metal to the much lighter metal. You can see now the two pieces of metal go together much, much better. So I can just hit Command or Control E now, and it's going to merge that top texture layer down to the scratched metal beneath it. Great. I'm going to position this over my text like I want it. And what we want to do is go ahead and blend this metal, to the red text, kind of like we did with the, kind of zippery whatever texture that we just applied. We're going to do this, though, much in the same way. So we're going to open up levels. The hotkey is Command or Control L. And we really need to boost the whites here. So we really need to crank the whites up. We need to make this look very, very light. All right. And even like the blacks, I want the blacks to be defined, but I don't want them to be even like that solid black. So in order to sort of make every black a little bit less black in an image, you drag the black output slider up. All right, and it's going to make the blacks more like very dark grays. And the same thing goes for white. White just does it with white. So it makes, instead of, having something that's solid white, you start to get like, light gray, medium gray, and so on and so forth. So just like that. That's probably pretty good. Hit OK. I actually kind of like that. It looks pretty cool. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this to the blend mode of multiply. So let's go down and choose multiply. And now we have even more kind of lines and texturization and all kinds of craziness on our text. Of course, we need to blend this as well. So let's do that same trick, Alt or Option, and drag that mask up. Now that's the full mask, not like the texturized one we used on the layer before. Let's actually select this layer here. Now that we have this second layer of texturizing at multiply, maybe this one can go to something like overlay and just brighten things up just a touch. I kind of dig that. You know what? Maybe not. Maybe it's just too dark. Let's go back to multiply. I'm going to reduce the opacity just a little bit more, though, because I don't want it to be too heavy. All right, cool. So that's great. And then this layer up here, we can probably even reduce the opacity just a little bit. I don't want to go too much with this layer, but just a little bit so we're not overpowering anything. Great. So let's create a new layer here. The new layer icon. We're going to name this layer Cracks, and we're going to now go ahead and paint some cracks into our Avengers style text. So I'm going to grab the brush tool. The hotkey for that is the letter B. Right click once again, go to the little cog wheel. We're going to keep replacing brushes because it clears out all the old brushes and just brings new ones in. Let's go with Cracks. I believe that's the right pack. I didn't rename any of these, by the way, just so if you downloaded them and have them in a folder, they should all be the same as what I have. Yes, this is the right one. You see this one over here, it just looks like a tri-crack. That's the one that I really want to work with. We can set the size down to like somewhere between 1,000 and 1,300. So let's go with like 1175 just because we can. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my foreground color to black, and I'm going to go ahead and begin painting rather large cracks throughout this text effect here. So I'm gonna apply, let's go with a crack there. Let's go with something kind of across the A like that. That's cool. Something maybe that shoots through there. Something small there. Let's make something that breaks through the S into the R. Something that goes up the E. There we go, kind of something like that. That's pretty cool. You know what actually we'll do, even with this one, let's reduce the size once again. I'm going to select the brush options up here, and I'm just going to change the angle a little bit. Right? So now I can just sort of have this like twisty looking one going right up through the N, and maybe just a very short stubby one going up to the bottom of the V. Something like so. That looks pretty good. There we go, something like that. We don't want to go too crazy. We probably have plenty of cracks just like that. So now that we've done that, we've painted the cracks. We want to add a simple drop shadow to these cracks. And so let's actually do that before I forget about it and we just move on. Let's actually select these inner shadows and just delete these so We don't have 8,000 inner shadows clogging things up. There we go. All right, add a drop shadow. The blend mode, we're going to change it to, let's go with overlay. We're still going to stick with white here. And I'm going to jack the opacity up to 100%. So a high opacity, blend mode overlay, so it interacts with like the red beneath it. This drop shadow essentially is going to try to make the cracks look like there's a little bit of a lip on them, right? So it's not just like a black paintbrush across text. You see how like there's that little lip? Isn't that kind of cool, right? So we got like that little lip. The angle, we're going to change to, well, we want to change it to something more like what we have. So like 140, maybe something like that. There we go. See, it just changes the drop shadow or light to the other edge of the crack. That looks good. A distance, though, of like 1 pixel probably works even better. Actually, you know what? I kind of like 2. 2 is kind of cool. I like that. 1 or 2 would probably work. Spread and size you can stick with 0 for them. All right, so we're going to hit OK here, and we're going to duplicate the mask that we have on the layer below. Hold down Alt or Option, just duplicate it, drop it on that. So now our cracks obviously are all right there, boom, only within our text effect. That's amazing. Make sure we select our cracks layer again. And we're going to drop the fill opacity. We're going to leave them at the blend mode normal. We're just going to drop the fill opacity. Now remember, fill opacity is just going to reduce the level of black, not the level of like drop shadow / light that's on the lip of the crack. So let's just drop the fill opacity to like, I don't know, 75%. It's going to let more of that red sort of shine through. That looks great. And one of the other things we can do is paint away kind of the top of these cracks in our mask. Again, right click, go to that cogwheel again. Go to replace brushes. We're going to bring up the 52 grunge brushes pack again. I don't know. I'm just going to choose any one of these brushes. Make sure that I have the mask selected, and maybe I'll make this a little bit larger. And just, click a few times. I'm not even using a tablet. I'm just going to click a few times just to make some of those cracks up at the top go away. You can see we just kind of, tore up the top of our mask a little bit. But I feel like it just makes it all blend a little bit better, brings a little bit more emphasis to the top of the letters as opposed to having all this, weight all the way through. We can kind of keep the dark stuff, the weighty stuff at the bottom of the text. I don't know. I just like it a little bit more. So now we're going to add some dirt and specks and kind of, grunge things up a little bit. So we're going to create a new layer. By hitting the new layer icon right here. We can just call this one grunge. We're going to grab the brush tool. We're going to right click, select that little cogwheel, go back to replace brushes, right? We've done this, it feels like a million times now. We're going to go with this grunge brush from Digital Revolutions. That's the pack we want here. This is a really great brush pack, actually. Hit OK. It's going to load it into Photoshop. And basically, we're going to gently just go around the edges of the text and grunge everything up a little bit. So I'm going to go with like this brush here. I'm going to size it down a little bit. And by the way, I'm just painting with the color black. I use my bracket keys to size things down a little bit. So I'm just like clicking once or twice here and there. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. All right, just kind of like that. All right, let's change brushes now. Let's go with like this one. That looks pretty cool. I'm leaving this one at the full shebang. 1000 pixel sizing, and I'm just kind of going around the edges on the left, the bottom, and the right. I'm not really doing much with the top. Again, I want it to almost look like there's a spotlight hitting the top of this text, so that's why we're kind of burning and darkening things a little bit. Oh, there's too much design in that brush. There we go. Something probably like that. We don't want to go too nuts, so we're going to have to reduce the opacity of this a little bit as it is and blend it a little bit. All right, so we've got this grunge layer. We're going to do the same thing we did where we drag a clean mask. We don't want to drag one of our grunged up masks. So I want one of these clean masks like that, right? So I'm going to hold my Alt or Option key, drag it up to the grunge layer. Great. We've blended it, or I'm sorry, not blended it, but masked it to just our text, just the way we want it. And let's set the blend mode to overlay. It's actually not bad. Let's try soft light. That'll make it even a little bit more subtle. So there's before, there's after. We've just kind of like dirtied it up a little bit. It's just, I don't know, giving it a little bit more bite. So with the grunge layer there, let's move on to the next layer, create another new layer. This one, I'm going to name it Fine Scratches. One of the beauties of the Avengers text is there's so much fine detail that goes into this text effect. So we're actually going to apply 2 different types of fine surface scratches. They're going to do a number of things. They're going to really add a lot of depth to our text, but they're also going to start to build this false illusion that our text is actually kind of deep. Like there's a glassy surface on the top, and then like the cracks and the texture is sort of this layer that's in and beneath that glassy surface. So fine scratches, bring up the brush tool again, go to the cogwheel once more, replace brushes, and we're going to go with shattered glass. So shattered glass is kind of like cracks, right? It's cracks in glass, but it's much more fine. And fineness is really what I want. I want something that's very small, very tiny. So with this, again, we're just painting with black. I'm just going to begin going over the text and, sort of putting these little sort of, black shatter marks, in different areas of the text. I'm using my left and right bracket keys to size up and down. You can click a couple times if need be to really emphasize and get your shattered, lines to really appear. All right, looks cool. And I'm going to show you a little trick here in a second. Let me just get these edge shatters all figured out. Make this smaller here. You can really add some great shadow that affects the outside. Don't forget any parts of this. You don't necessarily need to have a ton of shattered effect going on, but you want it to be somewhat consistent. So you don't want to have like tons of shatter in one part of your text and then, nothing on the other side. There we go. That looks good. I'm going to go with a couple of these larger shatters. Whoa, that's a little bit too large. Something that crosses through multiple pieces of lettering. There we go, something like that. That's cool. And down here at the bottom of the end. All right, so we've got some sort of more fine cracks and scratches. Now, to this, we're going to copy the exact drop shadow that we had on our cracks and place it up here on our fine scratches. So I'm just going to right-click on this layer and choose Copy Layer Style. Come up here to Fine Scratches, right-click and choose Paste Layer Style. I am just keeping an eye on the fact that fill is at 76%, and I think I really want to reduce that quite a bit more, right? So when we zoom in, you can really see these cracks are kind of looking more cracky. So we're going to go down to like 30% opacity to really make them look more like, scratches. Like it's not a crack that goes completely through the letter, but rather like a bear claw comes through and dings it. Although I don't know. Do you know of a bear claw that just dings? They seem to go through everything. So just like a little, little scratch like that. And now, of course, we need to mask this to our letters. So we're going to do that old Alt/Option, drag the mask up. Great, we have that. If it looks at all like too strong, you can always go into the mask, right? So like if these red ones down here look too bright to you, you can always go in into the mask and grab like a regular brush and just paint it away or just, lighten something up. I'm not going to mess with any of that. I'm going to let the chips fall where they may, and we'll just keep adjusting here and there as we build this effect, just in the interest of kind of, keeping things moving here. So let's add some dings and scratches to the edge because we've done all this texturizing to the red part, but we haven't really done anything to the silvery outerwear of this text. So we need to first build a selection that's going to grab that stuff for us, and then we can go ahead and texturize it. It's pretty easy. We're going to Command or Control click the gray text, right? It's something that grabs everything. Problem is, if we just mask, if we create a mask with this, we're going to essentially be painting over the red as well. You could say, well, just put everything below the red text. Well, you're going to see why in a little bit why I don't want to do that because, as far as non-destructive editing, adding color later on down the road, if we decide to maybe make this text green or blue or something, we kind of want everything above board. So I'm going to hold down my Command and Option keys and click on the red Avengers text layer thumbnail. That's going to load that text as a selection, but use that selection to knock a hole in my original selection. So you can see now I've just selected the gray bits, right? Like here in the middle of the R, it's maybe easier to see. Just that gray edge is selected. Great. So let's create a new layer. We can name this edges, really distressed edges or whatever. And we're going to go Layer, Layer Mask, Reveal Selection. And you're going to see here, we've just created a mask. The white obviously is what you're going to be able to see in that layer. So the only bits we're going to be able to see are the bits that are painted onto the edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to use, I think we're going to stick with that glass cracked brush pack and make sure we're working on the layer. Let's go back to the brush tool, and we're just going to go ahead and, work around the edges here. Click a few times, add some stuff here and there. We really want to make sure, again, just that we're being consistent with where we're placing all of our cracks, and that, one part of the text isn't getting everything, and we're missing big chunks of it, and, all that stuff. And that goes for the inner parts. I'm going to show you how I attack kind of the inner bits of our text here in just a second. That's great. Let's go ahead and crackety crack all this stuff. Good, good, good. Let's grab another Another piece. All right, so these cracks are quite large, so I'm just going to right-click and reduce the size a little bit because I like the pattern, but I don't like the size. I mean, I like the size now. And if, if any one of them just comes through and it just looks like it's just gray and not looking right, just click a few times, see, and you get nice solid black distress. We can always reduce the opacity down the road. All right, so we've kind of got all the edges, but everything in the middle we haven't really gotten. So let's just use the lasso tool and create a selection around, kind of the bits that we want to add some distressing to. So I'm going to start here, bring up my brush tool. All right, I'm going to add some cracks to there. Wow, that really, that tore that up a bit, didn't it? Looks good. Great. Cool. So we did that. Let's deselect that. Over here. The reason I'm doing this is because, remember, the layer is already masked, and the selection basically is just telling the paintbrush, hey, you're only allowed to paint right here within this selection. So I don't end up sort of accidentally, if you can imagine, spilling over into any other parts of the text, and certainly no other parts of the edge, the edge that we're actually distressing. Although that part of it kind of needed a little bit more. All right, so yeah, like here, we have this entire area of gray that nothing's even touched it. So let's just go ahead and select all of that. We can go in there and just, begin really kind of tearing it up a little bit. There we go, great. We can do the same thing here with this. So just go over it all thoroughly. Oops, that's going to be a little bit too strong. Although it kind of makes sense because you have that very dark crack right there, so maybe it wouldn't look too bad. All right, that looks good. Let's go ahead here with this stuff. Boom. Let's switch to a different brush here. Let's go with like this one here. But we need to make it a little bit smaller. Great. Cool. I like it. We can go in here like that. Nice. All right, over here, I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Cool. Looks good. We kind of got a little bit of the R as well. I'll just add that little bit of crackiness. All right, cool. So, I think you kind of get the point now. Whatever. We'll just add those cracks. So we really want to distress the outer part as well. You can spend, obviously, as much time distressing and crackling and texturizing as you want. There's before, there's after. So it makes a big difference. But what we do need to make sure that we do is reduce the opacity of this a little bit. So like I'm going to come in here and just reduce the overall opacity. You can, by the way, apply like a little bevel and emboss to this or something. I'm just going to reduce the opacity to, I don't know, about 75%, maybe a little bit less. I don't know. Just do what looks good to you. There you go, like 67% I've got. That looks good. All right, so now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and do another round of surface scratches. So we'll add this next layer of texturization. That is, these are going to be very fine surface scratches. I know we have fine scratches here. These are going to be even more fine than those. So we're going to do that. Again, create a new layer. We're going to name this top scratches. There we go. Almost misspelled it. Let's go with top scratches. Grab the brush tool again, right click, we're going to hit the cog wheel, and we're going to go replace brushes. Now we're going to bring in the Dirt 2 - scratches. I believe that's the correct one. Yes, there we go. So now with this brush pack, excuse me, we're going to add a bunch of long, thin scratch marks to the surface of our text as though we haven't already done that. But this is going to be doing it a little bit differently because here we're going to sort of use these scratches in a way that's going to help fake depth within each of these letters. So grab the brush tool, right click. We're going to choose one of these brushes to begin with. We're just going to paint with the paint with the color black. I'm going to click once, click twice. There we go. Added some really long, fine scratches. See how there's just those really, straight lines, just knifing right through our design. That looks good. Let's choose another brush here. Let's go with maybe this guy here. Let's go with a couple clicks there. That's good. A couple clicks down over here. Let's go with a smaller one right here. Cool. I'm going to go with a small one right in the middle of the E, kind of spanning over into the N. Same thing with the S right over here. Right? Great. Let's go with one of these, kind of coming into the S. You know what? Actually, let's not do that. What we're going to do with this is we're going to open up the brush options, and we're going to rotate this up. So we're kind of coming down on that same scritchy scratch angle. That's actually a lot of scratches. Let's just use the very tip of that. Like that. And the same thing down there at the bottom of the S. Wow, it's just a lot. I'm just going to click once. All right, let's collapse that. Right click. What other scratches do we want here? Let's go with this one maybe. Yeah, it looks kind of cool. Let's add that to the top of the N and the G in there, and then add like a smaller one here to the top of the E. Doesn't come through quite as solidly as I like. There we go. There we go, something like that. Cool. Let's go back to that original big one with the really nice kind of, long, it's, I don't know, it's got really great, it's got a great scratch pattern. That's what I'm trying to say. All right, so we've added all these really long, long, thin, scritchy scratch marks. What we need to do here is we're going to duplicate this layer, actually, before we do anything else to it. Well, maybe we should drag one of these masks up to mask it within the text, right? And then we'll hit Command or Control-J to duplicate it. I'm going to stretch out my layers panel here. Top scratches copy. I'm going to get rid of copy, and I'm going to name that top scratches shadows. And I'm going to drag this beneath top scratches because we're going to use one of these as a shadow layer because, well, you'll see why in just a second. I'm going to shut that off. What we're going to do is go ahead here to the top scratches, and we're actually going to duplicate again the layer style of that drop shadow that gives just that edge. So we're going to right click on this, choose copy layer style again, go to top scratches, right click, and paste the layer style. Remember, it's going to drop our fill. Let's actually boost the fill. We're going to keep it up around like 80% for these because that's just the way I want to do it for now. Now that we've done that, we've got our top scratches layer masked. We've got it, having like the edge, so it looks like it's actually like a nice fine scratch going through there. We're going to go down to the top scratches layer here. We're going to turn it back on. You can see it makes everything much more intense. We're going to divorce it from its mask, so we're going to unlink it. This means that we can now move these scratches around, but not move the mask. So you can see, holding on the Shift key, I can like hit the right arrow key, bump it over one, and then like the down arrow key, and maybe bump it down twice. That looks pretty cool, but it's not at all finished. Don't worry. Now we're going to go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. We're going to blur it like 1.5 pixels. There we go. I've got it already set. Hit OK. So essentially, we're sort of placing what would be a shadow for that scratch if it was like a deep scratch on a glassy surface. Now you can't really see the depth yet. That's because this shadow layer really needs to be reduced when it comes to the opacity. Let's reduce it down to like 30–40%, something like that. So there's before, there's after. Now those scratches have shadows that are really pulled away from the actual surface shadow, which helps to imply that there's depth within those letters. So let's just zoom out a little bit. Again, at this point, you probably want to save the document again. We're going to do a little bit more burning of the type. So let's create another new layer. The new layer icon, there we go. And I'm just going to call this one burning. We're going to go ahead with the brush tool as we've been doing. Right click, go to the cog wheel, replace brushes. And let's go 52 grunge brushes. Yeah, let's go with that. And let's take one of the larger brushes, something like that. That's cool. Again, we're painting with black here. I'm just going to I'm going to click just a couple places right along down here. This is like a very light burning that I'm looking to do here. Just kind of attack like the top corners and the bottom, maybe like the bottom central area a little bit. That looks pretty good. And now that we have this, again, we're going to mask this and then reduce the opacity and probably change the blend mode as well. Excuse me. So let's just alt drag the mask up. Cool. Let's try setting the blend mode to like overlay. Right? What does that look like? It's kind of cool. And then just reduce the opacity. Let's knock it down, I don't know, like 35%. You go anywhere from probably 35 to like 80% with this. Again, it's all about just personal taste and how you want this to look. So now we're going to add some splatter. This is going to be like another layer of trying to add depth and convey depth with our type. So create another new layer. I'm going to call this, you guessed it, splatter. And we're going to load yet another brush set. So here's one brush set we haven't used yet. Go to the cog, of course, replace brushes. Great. We have, which one is it? Oh, I don't remember. Oh, 20 spray brushes. Of course, that's the one we haven't used yet. Go ahead and open that up. All right, and once we have it open in Photoshop, we're going to go ahead again. We're probably going to size these brushes down to, like 1,000%, or I'm sorry, 1,000% to like 1,000 pixels Yeah, it's a P word. I'm going to grab this one here. I like how it's kind of tilted on an angle. I'm going to set the size just right off the bat to 1000. See how it's like nicely on an angle. What I'm going to do here is flip my foreground and background color. I want to be painting with white. And I'm just going to click like once or twice. There we go. I'm just looking to add a little bit of like spray of sort of these white beads into my text here. I don't know why I got suddenly quiet. There we go. Cool. Let's right click. Let's go with this one maybe. Size it down just a smidge. Something like so. Boom. Cool. All right, so now you can see we've really gotten the edges, but like I don't want to click in the middle because that just like really does bad stuff. So again, I'm going to use my lasso tool. I'm not going to feather the lasso tool though because I don't want I don't want to have sort of some bits of spatter that are sort of like semi-opaque and fading off into blackness. I want these to look like solid bits of particle that are sitting on the surface of our text here. So let's go down to like, just go type in 1000. That might be fastest and easiest. There we go. Just add some little bits. See, like all those dots, those are way too big. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go choose maybe this one again. Oh, let's learn from what we did last time and just go 1000 right off the bat. There we go. Cool. Great. Let's take this one again, this original one that we used. I kind of dig it. I'm going to go down a bit smaller, maybe like 600 or 700. All right, so I place that there. Place some spray there. Place some spray there. A little bit of spray. Well, I don't like the spray there, actually. All right, so let's just deselect that. We probably have just about enough. I'm not going to go, insane with it, but there's a lot there. And it looks like a lot more because we haven't masked it. So actually, let's just drag that layer mask up. So you can see we just have, like bits of white paint, if you will, that have sort of dripped down, splattered down on the top of our text effect, which actually I think it kind of looks cool just like it is now. It almost looks like a little bit of snow, but we're going to style the splatter. So we're going to go layer style, bevel and emboss. Let's start with the bevel and emboss here. All right, so with bevel and emboss, we're going to go inner bevel. We're actually going to go with smooth for the technique in this case. We're going to change the depth to 300. We're going to keep the direction as up. That's fine. A size of 1. We don't need anything very big. Soften is going to remain at 0. We're going to change the angle, however, to like a -50. The altitude, I'm going to leave that at 37, I think. As far as the gloss contour, I'm going to go back to the normal, just the straight line. Now, highlight mode, we're going to kick that back to normal. And what we're going to do is set it to white. And we're going to crank the opacity at like 60 or 70. I'll go with 60. Let's just go a little bit more subtle. Subtle, understated is usually beautiful. And the shadow, we're going to say normal black. And we're going to boost the shadow just a little bit. Maybe like 40, 45%. I got 44, whatever. That looks fine. All right, and you look at it. It doesn't look like much of anything. Don't worry, because what we do is we come up here to the blending options, and we reduce the fill opacity to 0. So now these all look like little divots and marks and wear that's been applied to the surface. Now, in order to add some depth, we're going to add a drop shadow. Now, the drop shadow is not going to be white like we've done before. Let's just go with normal. Let's set the color to black, and it looks very bizarre now. But with the drop shadow, we're going to go, well, let's start by reducing the opacity. Like 40% is probably good. An angle of 140 is also probably great. It kind of, flows in line with our bevel and emboss a little bit. And what else do I want to do here? Maybe increase the distance. Let's take it to like 7, maybe 8, 9, 10. Something like 10, I don't know, 12. This is where it kind of becomes, whatever you think looks good. I'm going to go with like 13. You can really do anything. Anywhere probably from like 7 or 8 to 13, 14, 15, depending on how sort of deep you want your text to look. Spread can be 0. Now the size, we do need to blur this because obviously as a shadow gets further away from its source, it gets a little bit more blurry. If you blur it too much though, you're going to need to make sure you go and boost the opacity up so the shadow is still noticeable. So I'll go with like 9 pixel size, but I also boosted the opacity of the shadow to like 50%. So it's just like a matter of personal taste and what you like there. That looks good. In fact, with the bevel and emboss, I might just boost the opacity on the highlight a smidge more and reduce the opacity of the shadow just a little bit. So just like that, it looks kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So now we have a bunch of these little sort of bits and pieces. Now, some of these obviously are just way too big. You can see like these big circles. They look like big circles, and we've got this big bit up here on the E. So what I'll do, I'm not going to mask them away. I'm actually going to go into the layer with the erase tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on it once, just to get rid of it. Boom, boom. So anything like that that just jumps out at you, you can just go in and just knock it out like that, just so you have like very fine specks that are sort of being bit into the surface of the text. All right, so let's just swing over here. We'll just collapse the layer styles for that splatter layer. Just get it out of the way. Again, if you see it and it looks, anything looks too intense, like we can just grab the opacity of this, right? Drop it just a little bit. I actually don't like that. I'm going to leave it up. I'm going to live with it the way it is. Cool. All right. So we're going to add a little bit of like a contrast adjustment now. We're going to do that by using a gradient map adjustment layer. Actually, my adjustments panel is open. The little gradient, that's the gradient map adjustment layer. Great. Now, if you apply a gradient map adjustment layer, the default gradient is this white to black. If your image looks like a negative, a digital or a film negative, excuse me, you might just want to hit the reverse button. Hey, look at that. Now our image looks a little bit more, realistic. It actually looks kind of cool. It's like a monochromatic version of what we've created. Well, we're going to harness this a little bit. Well, first of all, by Option or Alt clicking and dragging a mask up, you see Photoshop's going to say, hey, you're dropping a new mask on top of the old mask. Would you like to replace it? Of course I would. Yes. See, now our black and white or our monochromatic gradient map is just stuck there within our text. I'm going to double click that gradient to open up the properties panel and then click on the gradient stripe. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drag the white over because I actually want a little bit more white in this. All right, kind of like that. It looks cool. I'm going to boost the blacks a little bit too much though. There we go. Cool. I'm going to bring the whites in a little bit more even. Cool. There we go. All right, so we'll hit OK. We'll just bring the properties panel and put it away. So you can see here we've got a monochromatic version of this, but we're not going to leave it like this. We're going to, now that we have it masked to the text, we're going to just go ahead and try like the overlay blend mode. See how intense that makes that look? It's probably a little bit too much. You can see the burning. So like at this point, if we loved the shade of red, but it was just too dark, we could go and either mask away some of this burning, find some way to get rid of some of it, or just go ahead and get rid of some of it, right? Because there's just too much of it. If that's what we want to do, it's actually not too bad. Or we can just try like soft light. We can reduce the opacity a bit. You knock it down to like 50% or so, right? There's before, there's after. It just gives it like a nice intense pop of contrast and color. So next up, we're going to add a little complementary text. We're going to do that with, well, you guessed it, the text tool. Hotkey for that is the letter T. The font we're going to use is this Origicide regular font. It's one of the fonts that I recommended that you download at the beginning of the tutorial. It's a free font. We're going to say Age of Tutvid. Oh, there we go. Okay, the V looks kind of like a U. All right, so Age of Tutvid, and the size of 125, 130, whatever. I'm just going to go with 128 point. That's fine. That's what it's set to. And then I'm going to shift this up kind of into place. So, well, hey, look at that. It kind of fits perfectly. Great. Now we're going to go layer style, gradient overlay to apply a gradient to this. The blend mode of the gradient will be normal. The opacity of the gradient will be 100%. Now we're going to edit the gradient. All right, so, well, actually, let's uncheck reverse, just so we're working with kind of like a gradient as we would expect to work with it. All right, so the black color we're going to change here. The proper color, or at least close to the color that they have on the poster, is this BBCC DD color. It's like a very, very, very light blue. And then the white is essentially white, but it just has like, I don't know, a slight blue influence, F1, F5, F8. Hit OK. And then I'm going to just shift this inward a little bit more. There we go, something like that. Just so there's a little bit more of the darker blue at the bottom. Hit OK. And we can hit OK again. Now that we have this, we can go ahead and just kind of grungify this text, very quickly. Throw a layer mask on there. Grab the brush tool and just, paint away. Kind of whatever. Add a little bit of schmutz to it, if you will. All right, right click. I'm going to get picky here when there's really no point for me to get picky, but whatever. I'm going to go with the wrong brushes. Whatever. All right, I'm just going to use these brushes. Great. Cool. Let's go with like this here. It's kind of neat. All right, cool. So there we go. I mean, we just kind of grunged it up a little bit. All right, just added a little bit of something to our complementary text as well. And at this point, you are essentially finished. You can add a background to it. Obviously, it's as easy as either changing the background back here, or like if we go to this, you can download, by the way, you can download this background here that I'm about to use. Right, so this background, you can go to tutvid.com. Again, the link is right there in the bio. You can download this background, no strings, no questions asked, none of that junk. And you've got, you know, kind of this exploding outward background with that same sort of blue color. I still think there's too much burning in there. We got to just reduce the opacity of this stuff a little bit more. Maybe it's the fact that this is still multiplied. Let's go set that to overlay. Yeah, see, look at that. Maybe we should have gone with overlay initially. And then we can just burn in to darken up the bottom. There we go. That actually, I think that corrected a lot. All right, so now that we've done that, that looks pretty cool. Now that you have your text set, obviously you can add other background props if you've got superheroes and whatever the heck you want to it. I don't care. But check this out. This is kind of just like a little bonus tip that I'm going to throw in here at the end. If you go right above your Avengers text copy image, but below everything, the gradient fill, the fine highlight, all the texturizing junk, and you load that red layer as a selection. So we just selected all the red text, and you add a solid color fill layer. So we go layer, new fill layer, solid color. Hit OK, that's fine. And then let's go with like a blue. All right. Check that out. We get blue Avengers text, but that's not it. If you change the blend mode of this color of this layer to the blend mode of color, you preserve all of the shadows and all of the inner shadow and all of the texturization, all the detail that we just made. And then if you ever want to change the color of it, we'll just double click your fill layer. Let's make it green. Hey, look at that. We've got green Avengers text. It's a pink Avengers text, right? Literally any color that you would ever want. We sort of this yellowish orange Avengers text or aqua, right? Hey, look. Microsoft got a hold of it and did a Vista version of Avengers, right? Whatever you want, you can do all kinds of different versions of Avengers. I happen to think that the really bright blue is actually kind of pretty cool. So you can do all kinds of different versions of Avengers, and you can obviously apply this text effect to anything if you're willing to put in the time to really make the text effect work. But really, once you've kind of gone through it, you have a lot of the layer styles. It's just a matter of like tweaking and adjusting your actual textures and brushing patterns and ideas to different projects that you're working on. That's it. We have created the Avengers text in Photoshop. I hope you guys have learned something. I know it's been a long one. Thanks for sticking around and watching it. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you go hit up the site. That's www.tutvid.com. Subscribe to my newsletter. Follow me on Twitter @tutvid. And also, hit the like button for this video. It always helps. Leave a comment below. I will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks again for sticking around and watching. That's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one. Hey, wait, stop. Before you click away from this video, I just want to remind you, if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit that little like button. It helps this video go up, and going up is what I like. That's what we want to do. If you also have a couple more seconds, go ahead and leave a comment. That's cool too. That's it for this one. If you enjoyed this video, check out either of these two videos right here for more of the stuff that I do. This hand is weird. Right there. Thanks, guys.